Hey everyone, talking about all 25 scents in the Maison Martin Margiela Replica line, ranked from best to worst, or in the order we're going in worst to best, starting with 25, going all the way to number 1, and then throwing in a few bonus mentions from the filter part of the Replica collection as well. These are obviously just my opinions, but I'll try to qualify what is because I don't like something versus when it seems like it's just kind of a universally not as well done type of thing. So let's dive in. Number 25, Music Festival. This has notes of weed, yes, like cannabis, violet leaves, red apple, patchouli, tobacco, incense, leather, Virginia cedarwood, and cypress. And I didn't think I would find that wearable just from looking at the notes and the theme. It's about like Woodstock 1969, not like a modern music festival. But yuck. Yeah, that is just outright disgusting smelling to me. The tobacco, cypress, incense, and patchouli just get into such a dark accord, and the combination that's just pungent, dank, and earthy. But if you really like earthy fragrances, I will say this smells very niche, but like in a challenging way, but maybe that's your thing. I would still recommend checking out if that's the case. If you're looking for something just more mass appealing and pleasant to enjoyable to smell, I would skip that one. 24, Funfair Evening. This is based on the idea of obviously like a night at the county fair. Notes in it are star anise, pear, apple, petitgrain, neroli, orange blossom, tuberose, moroccan rose, caramel, Tahitian vanilla, ambroxan, and white musk. Fun concept, as with most Margiela fragrances, but in this case the anise and the tuberose kind of ruined it for me a little bit. The combination of that licorice kind of vibe that comes from the star anise and the indolic white floral accord just is so jarring to me. It really clashes, and it gets really soapy in like an old-fashioned mature leaning kind of way, especially by the dry down. I don't think it smells low quality or anything, just not a good match for my taste, and I think there's better stuff out there that does this kind of sweet gourmand type of vibe. Next up, we've got Springtime in a Park, based on, yes, Springtime in a Park. This has pear, bergamot, blackcurrant, lily of the valley, jasmine, rose, damask, musk, vanilla accord, and ambroxan. The beginning really does feel like walking through an area of like fresh white florals in springtime, light breeze blowing. As it progresses, it gets a bit more musky to me and does lean mature at times. The jasmine also gets indolic at times, almost tuberose-like. Very feminine leaning, so if that's your thing, maybe you would like this one. If it's not, skip it. Not my favorite of this type of scent, and certainly not my favorite, obviously, in the Replica line, but if you like strong musk and indolic white flowers, this would be a good one for you. Next up, with the floral theme, we've got number 22, Flower Market. This has notes of green leaves, freesia, jasmine, more jasmine, tuberose, rose, peach, cedar, and oak moss. There's a flower market in San Francisco that I sometimes used to be around as a kid, and this does smell somewhat reminiscent of it, though more synthetic, which makes sense. Overall, I don't find it too impressive, though. It's not bad, but it's just not very original, especially compared to many of the other Margiela fragrances in this line. Also very strong white florals and could easily be cloying if not sprayed lightly, but if you like strong white florals, again, a good option for you to check out. Next up, Bubble Bath. This has notes of soap bubbles, pink pepper, bergamot, rose, lavender, jasmine, coconut, patchouli, and white musk. Overall, fresh, clean, and soapy, but the patchouli note is way more present than I expected and just really kills the vibe of it for me. I was hoping this would smell like a bubble bath in more of like a playful and fun way and less like mature high-end soap, which is what it ended up smelling to me. And from many other reviews I've seen, a lot of people say the same thing. It's not like what you typically think of, at least not the more youthful kind of like bubble bath. It's a lot more kind of like austere and kind of stuffy, fancy soap. Next, Dancing on the Moon. This is from the Neil Armstrong collection. No, I'm just kidding, but it is indeed based on the concept of someone dancing on the moon, or just walking at least. This has notes of aldehydes, moonflower, jasmine, frangipani, iris, cashmere, and ambergris, and musk. Really well blended, smells really high quality. Not my thing, but I'm impressed by it nonetheless. To me, the opening smells like a combination of like a high-end niche fragrance, in terms of that almost like potpourri-esque kind of regal vibe in the background, and also some sunscreen vibes going on, maybe from the frangipani. There's a note in it that's just almost too much for me. Again, it's probably that, but I think it could smell great on the right person, and it does calm down as it dries down. If you're into sweet florals and you want something a little bit more unique, definitely worth checking out Dancing on the Moon. Next up, Sailing Day. This is obviously an aquatic based on like going out on a boat in the middle of the ocean. This has aquatic accord, aldehydes, juniper, coriander, iris, rose, red seaweed, ambergris, and orchinox. Not sure what that is, but a nice aquatic that gets its point across well, but is not impressive to me so much necessarily compared to a lot of other fragrances in the Replica line. And I've smelled a lot of similar aquatic fragrances out there. So it also has a little bit of like a fabric softener vibe to me at times. But again, overall pleasant smell. I like it, but it's not something that I would choose over other fragrances. I will give it bonus points though for the juice being blue. That always looks cool and it's pretty fun. Next up, at the Barber's, has notes of basil, bitter orange, black pepper, lavender, rosemary, geranium, white musk, moss, leather, and tonka bean. This is very much more old school, kind of fougere-ish, and barbershop fragrances usually tend to have like some pepper, some basil, some aromatic type of stuff like that, and this definitely fits the theme. Smells perfectly high quality. If that's your thing, I would recommend checking it out. But if you're not into the idea of a kind of like a more old school classic masculine scent, you probably will not be a fan of this. And to me, I wish it felt a little bit more of like a modern take on it, but I get what they're going for and it does fit the theme for that. Next up, Promenade in the Gardens. This has Turkish rose, wood, patchouli, sandalwood, vetiver, freesia, and jasmine. It does smell like a garden, but not necessarily one that I'd want to be in. I just like rose and patchouli combinations, and both are very, very present here. But that's just my taste, and I wanted to put this high enough on the list that even though it may sound like I'm critiquing it more than some of the ones lower, I do think it smells extremely high quality. So if you like the idea of a rose and patchouli fragrance, this would certainly be worth checking out. Again, very high quality, almost smells niche to me. Next up, Under the Lemon Tree. This has notes of calamansi, petitgrain, cardamom, coriander, absolute, green tea, mate, cedarwood, and musks. Not my favorite, but not bad at all. It's definitely unique without being like outright weird or smelling too obviously like challenging in a bad way. It's pleasant, fairly mild and light. It does have a little bit of what could almost be considered kind of veering into that really astringent cleaning spray citrusy territory, but I think it's pulled back enough to still be wearable. I think it's one of the more forgettable ones from the Replica line that I've tried, but by no means bad. If you like light floral lemon scents, yeah, it would be worth trying. Next up, Lazy Sunday Morning. This has pear, lily of the valley, aldehydes, iris, rose, orange flower, patchouli, ambrette seeds, and white musk. So I either dislike or feel neutral about most of the notes in this, but the combination is surprisingly nice. Relaxed yet elegant is kind of the main description that comes to mind for me. The patchouli here is on the cleaner side, not dirty, so it really works even to a non-patchouli fan. By the dry down, it's not necessarily the most original or unique scent, but it is pleasant and calming, yet still refined scent. So I think it doesn't completely fit what I would expect from like a Lazy Sunday Morning type of theme, but it works enough to, not be too far out. Next up, Soul of the Forest. This has fir balsam, cistus, cedarwood, pepper, pimento berries, blackcurrant, moss, and patchouli. Obviously supposed to be like a deep forest scent. Really interesting, and they did a great job of accuracy for what it's going for. I really can't think of many other fragrances either that I've smelled too similar to this, despite having smelled so many foresty ones before, so it was fun to check out, and I like that it actually did manage to be unique within that area, or even just for any type of scent. It does not feel very wearable to me as an everyday scent, a bit too intense for that, but from an artistic perspective, I'll give it props. Next, Across Sands. This evokes a desert escape with fruits and flowers blooming amongst dunes, according to Margiela at least. It's an exotic oud scent lifted by warm notes of dates, spices, and cinnamon, and a base of osmanthus, which has kind of like an apricot smell, patchouli, and cistus. And this is basically exactly what it sounded like going into it, a sweet oud fragrance with dried fruit and spices. Then there's that kind of like little apricot vibe from the osmanthus, which works really well actually. It's not my type of fragrance. The oud is pretty clean. It's not animalic, but it's still very noticeable and just not my type of thing, but very high quality and smells very refined. If you like the idea of like a mature dried fruit and oud regal type of scent, that is a good one. Next up, Autumn Vibes, supposed to smell like autumn or fall. Notes of pink peppercorn, cardamom, coriander, carrot seeds, nutmeg, olibanum, cedarwood moss, fir balsam, and labdanum. So this definitely smells like fall to me, but somehow it also smells like a combination of By the Fireplace, one of the other Margiela scents that we'll be getting to soon, and sunscreen, which is just random. It's fun to smell, to feel like, as the title says, autumn vibes. It feels like being outdoors around wet fallen leaves with kind of smokiness in the air. Not bad at all, and I enjoy it. but when it's cold enough to wear this, I'd rather just wear By the Fireplace. I think it's just kind of like, almost if you picture like a good song that you like and then you hear the demo version of it, it's kind of like, okay, well, yeah, that was good, but it's so much better what it actually turned into after it was produced. Next up, Matcha Meditation. This has bergamot, mandarin, green tea, matcha, orange blossom, jasmine, benzoin moss, and white chocolate. So to me, Matcha Meditation is at first too strong in just like a really kind of bitter, hardcore matcha way, and then kind of more dominated by other notes than the matcha after the initial opening. But I do think it's interesting. One, it's definitely not linear. It kind of like really takes you all over. It's cool to get that kick of the matcha. It's just a little bit too kind of intense for me here. I wish it was kind of a bit more well-rounded, but then on the other hand, by the dry down, it kind of just doesn't smell as much like matcha green tea anymore. So I'll take away some points for that or whatever, but I do think it's still an interesting scent and worth checking out if you like matcha, definitely. Now we are in the top 10. Number 10, Coffee Break. This has notes of pepper, orange, flower petals, patchouli, cypriol, tonka bean, benzoin, vanilla, cedarwood, vetiver, coffee, and lavender. And this is kind of a refreshing take on a coffee scent, because when coffee is used in a fragrance, sometimes it just comes across so dark and intense, just like 10 shots of espresso, like somebody's putting it in there and they just have to let you know, the perfumer or whoever, like, there's coffee in this, look how cool this is. This is more like drinking a latte in the breezy coffee shop next to a candy store. Pleasant, uplifting, not overly strong, with a touch of sweetness to it. So I would say, like, I like it, but I also think it's kind of bullshit that it just really does not smell much like coffee at all. So in this case, I mean, if they're going to call it, put coffee in the name, then this would be more appropriate for them to actually make it smell like coffee. But if you like the idea of lavender and kind of a much more subdued coffee, check it out. Number 9, When the Rain Stops, has notes of bergamot, vegetable accord, pink pepper, aquatic accord, rose petal, jasmine, pine needle, patchouli, and moss. Really pleasant and enjoyable scent. Nice combination of being like dewy and light, but also having kind of just the right amount of that earthier green side to give it some balance. And I like this a lot more than, for example, London Rain by Jo Malone and some of the other kind of like after the rain type of scents that this is supposed to kind of be in that category of. Not the most original, but really refreshing scent for a spring day. Very, very unisex overall to my nose. A lot of these are, but as you can imagine, some of the more super floral ones lean feminine. And there are a couple that lean more masculine, like at the Barbers, but it's pretty obvious, I think, which ones would lean which way. Next up, Whispers in the Library. This is inspired by the scent of wax, wood, and paper, the combination of pepper notes, woody and warm notes, cedar, vanilla, which is supposed to recreate the atmosphere of an ancestral library. I like this, but I was expecting to absolutely love it. To me, it doesn't necessarily scream library, more of just like a woodsy vanilla. Nonetheless, a calming and perfectly enjoyable scent in and of itself, but I would not get your hopes up about this being one of the more vivid ones in the collection, of it really smelling exactly like that. But again, I do think it smells good and I like smelling it. 7, Tea Escape, mint, bergamot, pink pepper, green tea, jasmine, osmanthus, milk, rice, and mate. I've seen a lot of other people say that they like this better than the more recent version, which is Matcha Meditation. Or maybe not version, I should say, but just another similar, tea one. And like I said, to me, Matcha Meditation is at first too strong and then kind of doesn't feel as exciting and green tea-ish by the end. This one smells a lot more calming, true to form for the description. It's a tea fragrance. It's done really well where you can definitely get the tea, but it does not feel bitter or stale. I'm very picky about tea fragrances. If they're like too much of an overdose of bitter black tea, not a fan. This one I think does it perfectly. Next up, number 6, called Lipstick On, based on the smell of like lipstick and sort of makeup. This has heliotrope, bergamot, neroli, iris, galbanum, orange blossom, tonka bean, bourbon, vanilla, and patchouli. Very makeup-y with a sweet and creamy twist that makes it feel more mass appealing as a wearable fragrance than you would expect in a good way. Well blended, just really nicely balanced mix of accords. I was thinking it was just going to be like some powdery iris bomb, but it's so much more well-rounded than that. Leans very feminine, a little bit too much so for my personal taste of what I like to wear, but I do think that it could still be worn unisex. And if you don't normally like iris, I think this would be a good one to try to kind of like, oh, okay, wow, some stuff does exist that's not always sort of that really intense way the iris can sometimes be done. Top 5. Number 5 is Wicked Love. This has notes of green pepper, basil, water hyacinth, Egyptian jasmine, Rose essence, centifolia, cedar, white musk, and vetiver. This is really fresh, floral, and green with a woodsier dry down. So this is based on just kind of like a love affair, basically, sort of in a wicked, forbidden way, I guess. Very bright in a unique way. And surprisingly, I did not find the opening overly harsh, because I saw a lot of other reviews seem to, and you would think like green bell pepper. Ew, like I don't even like real green bell pepper, really. I'll eat it if it's in a stir fry or something, but I'm not going to be a huge fan of it. But the super green note here mixed with the sweet florals creates this really inviting scent to me. Really random, but for some reason to me it reminds me almost of like Victoria's Secret's Love Spell in a good way, not in as in it smelling cheap or anything like that. Overall, I think just a really, really well done, creative, sweet green fragrance that's very unisex. Not my taste to wear necessarily, but I think it would be a great daytime kind of springtime signature scent for someone even. Next up, Flying, about not being on a plane. I don't think anybody wants to smell that. But just kind of like a hot air balloon or just like flying through the air in the sky. This has notes of bergamot, neroli, musk, moss, and orange flower, almond flower, and ylang ylang. Beautiful, really light, airy, and fresh. Very neroli forward, but to me more accessible and appealing for like an everyday smell than something like neroli portofino or many of the classic neroli ones out there, which can seem a little bit sharp or intense at times. This is simpler, but still really, really bright and pleasant, just a joy to smell. Next up, top 3, Jazz Club. This has lemon, pink pepper, neroli, clary sage, rum, Java vetiver oil, styrax resin, tobacco leaf, and vanilla bean. And I mentioned this on my channel before, but when I first tried a sample of Jazz Club, and I was only starting to just get more into fragrances, I hadn't smelled that much stuff that wasn't just kind of like, Versace or whatever basic kind of designer stuff. And I thought it smelled disgusting. I could not believe anyone would want to wear it. I was looking back, I found some old like messages to a friend at the time where I was like, you won't believe this, you have to try it, it's so disgusting, and people rave about it. But after sampling, I tried about 600 other fragrances again before I revisited this, and I enjoy it now. And 2,000 fragrances later, I enjoy it even more. I don't like boozy or tobacco notes in general, but this kind of soothes out the rough edges with a really nice balance of that pink pepper, lemon, and vanilla. And I can see for sure, since I felt that way too, how it might smell too like cigarette-y and just kind of like gross to some people, but I think it's just the kind of thing that if you've smelled more and then you kind of revisit it, you might end up liking it more. Like me, now I think of it as just a total classic, one of the best boozy tobacco scents ever, and I'm like charmed by it now outright. Number 2, Beach Walk. This has bergamot, pink pepper, lemon, ylang ylang, coconut milk, translucone, whatever that is, musk, cedar, and benzoin. This smells like walking on a tropical beach after the rain. Really bright floral scent, and the notes combine into smelling really jasmine-esque to me, even though that's not officially listed as a note. It's like really breezy, but without feeling forgettable or like too light, yet strong, and it doesn't feel try-hard at the same time. Just addictive to smell. And this is a bit too feminine leaning for a fragrance that I personally like to wear, but I would love to be around somebody else who is wearing this. I also think this would be a great candle. I'm definitely interested in checking out that because I know they do sell it. But yes, this is by far, to me, the best feminine-leaning Margiela fragrance. Just wonderful to smell. And number 1, my all-time favorite fragrance, not just by the Replica series, not just by Margiela, just of anything ever by the Fireplace. This has chestnuts, red berries, clove oil, cashmere, vanilla, orange blossom, and neroli. There is nothing I love more in the winter than wearing this. It's like really burnt marshmallows by the fire, and it can, on your skin, it can go a little bit sweeter or it can go really smoky. I remember the first time that I tried this, I was about to go get a package from the mailroom, and I said to my wife, do you think people are going to think that I just came from a house fire, like a bonfire or something? This just smells so over the top, ridiculously like a real, smell that you'd get after being in a fire or something like that. She's like, no, it smells nice or whatever. So I've definitely come to really, really love it. At first I was kind of like, maybe this is better as a room spray, but no. Oh, I love it so much. I cannot wait for it to be what I just call winter by the Fireplace weather. Don't even say winter anymore. It's just, that's what it is. So yeah, really, really burnt marshmallow and really smoky campfire. Just so good in every single way. A couple bonus mentions from the Filter collection, which is technically sort of part of the Replica one. Glow. This is kind of subtle, sunny, and clean, and these ones in the Filter collection are based on the idea of a photo filter, glow being one and the other being blur. Glow is to make things glow and be more radiant, so you can kind of wear it on its own. It's like a light sort of almost clean neroli-ish type of scent, or you can layer it to bring out the more radiant notes in other fragrances, like putting a filter. The other one being Blur, which is like a soft cotton skin scent that could also be layered, like a Blur filter, where it just kind of like, kind of the opposite of making it more radiant, I guess. That one's a bit too ambroxan-y for me. I definitely think Glow is way better. But anyway, those are the top 25 plus the 2 bonus ones from the filter collection. Let me know your favorites in the comment, and I will also put links where you can get at least a sample, if not a bottle, for all of these. Many of these are discontinued, but you can still buy decants and samples of pretty much all of them, so you can totally still wear them.